He thought that because I stayed quiet, I was weak. But while he was bragging about his latest triumph to the interns, I spent exactly $7 to buy back 5 years of his reputation. And precisely 5 minutes later, I sat sipping my coffee while security escorted him out of the building, his career evaporating faster than the foam on my latte. My name is Mara Ellison, and I've worked at Crescent Logic for 7 years. 7 years of fluorescent lights humming like trapped wasps, of glass walls that promise transparency but deliver surveillance, of smiles that never reach the eyes. They call it a tech paradise here in Brooklyn Heights, Ohio, all exposed brick and artisanal coffee machines, ping-pong tables gathering dust while we slave away at our standing desks. But beneath the Silicon Valley wannabe veneer, it's just another corporate Shark Tank where the predators wear hoodies instead of suits. I'm what they call a data analyst, though what I really am is a translator. I turn chaos into patterns, lies into statistics, and corporate wishful thinking into cold, hard reality. At 34, I've outlasted 3 restructurings, 2 buyouts, and countless culture refreshes. I've learned to keep my head down, my work impeccable, and my opinions to myself. They mistake my silence for submission, my introversion for weakness. Let them. The open office sprawls across the 10th floor like a petri dish, breeding ambition and backstabbing in equal measure. No cubicles here, just long tables where we sit elbow to elbow, pretending collaboration while guarding our screens like state secrets. The executives have real offices, of course, with doors that close and windows that actually open. The rest of us make do with noise-canceling headphones and the illusion of privacy. I chose the corner spot by the emergency exit 2 years ago. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I like having my back to the wall and a clear path out. It also gives me the perfect vantage point to observe the ecosystem. I watch the account managers peacock past with their designer bags. The developers huddle in their black t-shirt uniforms. The sales bros high-five over deals that may or may not exist. And then there's Chase Doran. Chase arrived 18 months ago like a hurricane in Tom Ford Cologne, fresh from some Ivy League MBA program. All perfect teeth and practice charm. The kind of guy who uses synergy unironically and actually believes his own elevator pitch. At 28, he's younger than me, but acts like he invented ambition. His desk, 3 spots down from mine, is a shrine to his ego. Awards he bought on eBay. Photos with C-list tech influencers. A collection of business books he's never read but quotes incorrectly in meetings. What makes Chase dangerous isn't his ambition. This place runs on ambition like cars run on gasoline. It's his ability to make you believe he's your friend right until the moment he slides the knife between your ribs. He remembers birthdays, brings donuts on Fridays, offers to help with projects. But every gesture is transactional, every kindness an investment in future betrayal. I learned this the hard way. But then again, the hard way is the only way I seem to learn anything. The morning it all started, I was running regression analyses on our Q3 customer churn data. Fascinating stuff, if you're the kind of person who finds patterns in chaos soothing, which I am. The numbers were telling a story our CEO wouldn't want to hear. Our revolutionary new software wasn't so revolutionary after all. Customers were leaving faster than marketing could lure new ones in. Working hard or hardly working, Chase's voice slithered over my shoulder. He had this way of appearing silently, like a well-dressed ghost. I didn't look up from my screen. Working. That's what I love about you, Mara. So dedicated. He perched on the edge of my desk, his Ralph Lauren khakis dangerously close to my coffee mug. What's got you so focused on this beautiful Thursday? The Hartman account analysis. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Gray rock method, be too boring to engage with. Oh, that's not due until Monday. His smile could have sold snake oil to pharmacists. You're always so ahead of schedule. Maybe you could help me with something. I'm swamped with the Patterson presentation. I finally looked up. His face was a mask of boyish helplessness, the kind that made our female interns flutter and our male managers see themselves at his age. But I saw the calculation behind his green eyes, the way they tracked to my screen, memorizing my data. I'm sure you'll manage, I said, turning back to my work. He laughed, the sound like ice cracking. You're probably right. I always do. He stood, brushing imaginary lint from his shirt. But hey, if you finish early, offer stands. We're all on the same team, right? The same team. If only he knew how much those words would come back to haunt him. He sauntered away, stopping to chat with the marketing girls, his laugh carrying across the wasteland of desks. I saved my work, encrypted the file, and made a mental note to back up everything twice. I'd been at Crescent Logic long enough to know that when Chase Doran showed interest in your work, you were about to become either an ally or a casualty. I just didn't know yet which one I'd be. The knife went in on a Tuesday. I'd spent the entire weekend perfecting the Hartman analysis, 60 pages of data visualization, predictive modeling, and actionable insights that could save the company's biggest account. Hartman Industries was hemorrhaging money through our platform, and I'd found the leak. More importantly, I'd found the fix. It wasn't sexy, wasn't revolutionary, but it would work. That's what I do. I make things work. Monday had been quiet. Too quiet, I realize now. Chase had been absent from his desk most of the day, huddled in conference rooms with doors closed. I should have known. Predators don't disappear, they're just stalking from a different angle. Tuesday morning, 9:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was watching the clock, waiting for the 10 a.m. meeting where I'd present my findings. My laptop was prepped, my talking points memorized. I'd even worn my good blazer, the navy one that made me look like I belonged in those glass-walled rooms where decisions got made. Dennis Kumar, our department head, sent the email that changed everything. Team, quick update on the Hartman presentation. Chase will be taking the lead on this. He's developed some innovative approaches that align with our Q4 strategic vision. Mara, please forward your supporting data to Chase by EOD. Thanks for being team players. Supporting data, 7 words that reduce 2 weeks of work to a footnote. My hands didn't shake. They never do. But something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest, like swallowing winter air. I looked across the open office to where Chase sat, already surrounded by the presentation team. He caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up, mouthing, "Thanks for the help." The meeting happened without me. Through the glass walls of conference room A, I watched Chase click through my slides, point to my data, explain my solutions with his practiced TED Talk gestures. The executives nodded, impressed. Our CFO actually smiled, something I'd seen happen maybe twice in 7 years. But Chase had made one crucial change. Where my analysis showed gradual improvement through systematic fixes, his version promised a miraculous turnaround. He'd inflated the projections by 300%, turned conservative estimates into guarantees, transformed careful hedging into bold predictions. He was selling them a fantasy built on my foundation of facts. When he emerged an hour later, he was the conquering hero. Backslaps from the bros, admiring glances from the interns, a personal handshake from Kumar. The whole performance made me sick. But what came next was worse. "Mara!" Kumar's voice boomed across the floor. "Can I see you for a minute?" The walk to his office felt like a funeral march. He didn't even wait for me to sit down. "I'm disappointed," he started, hands folded like a disappointed principal. "Chase showed me your original analysis, the pessimistic projections, the overcautious approach. This isn't the kind of forward-thinking work we need." "Sir, those projections were based on fear," he interrupted. "Chase explained how you've been resistant to collaboration, hoarding data, working in isolation. That's not the Crescent Logic way." My mouth opened, then closed. What could I say? That Chase had stolen my work and dressed it up in lies? That his innovative approach was just my approach with imaginary numbers? In the corporate world, the first person to claim credit wins. Truth is just an inconvenience. "I expect better," Kumar continued. "Chase has offered to mentor you on presentation skills and strategic thinking. I suggest you take him up on it." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Kumar had already turned back to his monitor. I was dismissed. The walk back to my desk stretched forever. I could feel eyes on me, some sympathetic, most just curious about the drama. The office thrived on other people's failures like plants feeding on compost. Chase was waiting at my desk, leaning against it with studied casualness. "Hey," he said softly, his voice pitched for sympathy. "I hope there's no hard feelings. Kumar asked me to step up, and I couldn't say no, but your groundwork was absolutely essential. Couldn't have done it without you." I looked at him, really looked at him. The concerned furrow of his brow, the slight tilt of his head that suggested empathy. He'd probably practiced this expression in his bathroom mirror. "Of course," I said, my voice steady as a flat line. "We're all on the same team." His smile flickered, just for a second. Something in my tone. Maybe. Or the way I held his gaze a beat too long. But then his mask snapped back into place. "Exactly. And hey, that mentoring thing Kumar mentioned, just a formality. But maybe we could grab coffee sometime, go over presentation strategies? I'd love to share what I've learned. I'll think about it." He squeezed my shoulder, the touch made my skin crawl, and headed back to his desk. Around me, the office hummed with its usual ambient noise, keyboards clacking, phones buzzing, the espresso machine hissing like an angry cat. I sat down, woke my computer, and stared at the screen without seeing it. In my mind, I wasn't at my desk anymore. I was already 3 moves ahead, planning something that would make Chase Doran understand what it really meant to be on my team. He thought he'd won, but he'd made one critical error. He'd underestimated the quiet ones. We're quiet not because we have nothing to say, but because we're listening, watching, learning, and planning. Revenge, like data analysis, requires patience and precision. You can't rush it. You can't let emotion cloud your judgment. You have to wait for the perfect data set, the ideal conditions, the one vulnerability that changes everything. I found mine on a Friday afternoon, 3 weeks after the Hartman incident. I was staying late, nothing unusual there. The office had emptied except for a few developers debugging code and one overambitious intern organizing files. Chase had left at 4:30 for client drinks. Translation: happy hour at the upscale bar where junior executives pretended they could afford $18 cocktails. His computer was still on. The screensaver, a slideshow of his CrossFit achievements, cast blue light across his empty desk. Sloppy? But then again, Chase had never considered me a threat. To him, I was just background noise, corporate furniture with a pulse. I wasn't planning to snoop. I was walking past to refill my water bottle when I noticed something odd on his screen. An Excel file was open behind the screensaver. I could see the grid lines ghosting through his flexing photos. My job had trained me to notice patterns, anomalies, things that didn't belong, and quarterly reports didn't belong open on unattended computers. I paused, looked around. The nearest occupied desk was 50 feet away, the developer wearing noise-canceling headphones that could block out a nuclear blast. 2 steps to his desk, a gentle mouse movement to wake the screen. What I saw made my stomach drop. It wasn't just data manipulation. It was a masterclass in corporate fraud. Chase had been systematically inflating client engagement metrics, creating phantom user accounts, doctoring conversion rates. The Hartman presentation hadn't been his first fiction. It was part of a pattern. Every major win he'd claimed, every bonus-worthy achievement, every meteoric rise in his accounts, all built on fabricated numbers. But here's where Chase proved he wasn't as smart as he thought. He'd done it all from his company laptop, using his company credentials, leaving a digital trail that led straight back to him. He'd even been stupid enough to save different versions showing the evolution of his lies. Draft 1, Draft 2, Draft Final Reel. Amateur. I took out my phone, then stopped. Photos could be questioned, dismissed, explained away. I needed something more elegant, something that would let Chase destroy himself. That's when I spotted it, a tiny inconsistency in his formula structure. He was using a macro to auto-adjust his fake numbers, making them look organic, realistic. But the macro had a flaw. With the right trigger, It would reveal every single alteration he'd made, highlighting them like a confession written in neon. All I needed was access to the reporting system's backend, and for that, I needed hardware. The next morning, Saturday, I drove to Tech World, a grimy electronics surplus store in the industrial district, the kind of place that sold last generation's dreams for pennies on the dollar. Behind towers of outdated keyboards and tangles of cables, I found what I needed: a basic USB logger, the kind IT departments use for diagnostics. Price tag, $7. Less than Chase spent on his morning latte. The following Monday, I arrived early, 6:45 a.m., when the office was tomb quiet and the cleaning crew had just left. I plugged the USB into the reporting terminal, the communal computer where we uploaded client presentations. A few lines of code, nothing fancy, just a simple logging script that would activate when specific files were accessed. Chase's files, the ones he'd submit for the month-end investor meeting. Then I waited. Days crawled by. Chase strutted around the office, basking in his recent wins. He'd started wearing a new watch, a Rolex Submariner that cost more than I made in 3 months. Client gift, he told anyone who'd listen. They really value what I bring to the table. Thursday afternoon, he started prepping his month-end presentation. I watched him from my corner spot, saw him access the doctored files, begin arranging them into a compelling narrative of growth and success. He was meticulous. I'd give him that. Every lie supported by another lie. A house of cards that looked like a fortress. Big presentation tomorrow, he announced to our pod, his voice carrying that fake humility successful people perfect. Wish me luck? You don't need luck. Sandra from marketing cooed. You're on fire lately. He beamed. Just doing my part for the team. I smiled into my coffee mug. In less than 24 hours, Chase Doran would learn what happened when you built your castle on quicksand. My $7 investment was about to pay dividends he'd never calculated. The trap was set. All that remained was for him to walk into it, and Chase Doran never could resist a spotlight. Friday, month end. The day when Crescent Logic's leadership would gather in the boardroom to review performance metrics and decide whose head would roll next quarter. The day Chase had circled on his calendar with a gold star, like a child anticipating Christmas. I arrived at my usual time, 8:17 a.m., consistent, predictable, invisible. Chase was already at his desk, his lucky presentation outfit impeccable, the blue suit that brought out his eyes, the Harvard tie clip he'd bought on eBay, shoes polished to mirror perfection. He was running through his slides one more time, lips moving as he rehearsed his pitch. At 9:45, he stood, gathered his materials, and strode toward the elevator. Several colleagues wished him luck. Jennifer from HR actually applauded. I kept my eyes on my screen, just another worker bee in the hive. What Chase didn't know was that my little $7 USB had been busy all night. The moment he'd uploaded his presentation to the central server, my code had awakened. Like a digital archaeologist, it had excavated every layer of his deception, every formula he'd tweaked, every number he'd inflated, every trend line he'd manipulated, all carefully cataloged and cross-referenced with the original data. But here's the elegant part. It didn't just collect evidence, it created a parallel presentation. While Chase's version showed meteoric growth and dazzling success, my ghost in the machine prepared the truth. Same slides, same format, but with the real numbers. And at 9:58 a.m., 2 minutes before his presentation was scheduled to begin, it did something beautiful. It sent everything to the compliance department's anonymous whistleblower inbox. Not from me, from Chase's own login credentials. You see, when you're sloppy enough to save passwords in your browser and arrogant enough to believe no one would ever check, you create opportunities for poetic justice. My code had simply borrowed his digital identity to confess his own sins. 10:00 a.m. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I watched Chase begin his performance. The executives leaned forward, engaged. The CFO was actually taking notes. Chase clicked through his slides with the confidence of a man who believed his own lies. 10:03 a.m. Margaret from compliance burst through the boardroom door like an avenging angel in Ann Taylor. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see their impact. She handed the CFO a tablet. His face went from interested to confused to furious in the span of 3 heartbeats. 10:04 a.m. The room erupted, not with applause, but with accusations. Chase's mouth moved, but his silver tongue had turned to lead. He gestured at his laptop, clicked frantically through his slides. But the evidence was damning, every fabrication highlighted in red like a teacher grading a failing paper. 10:05 a.m. Security arrived. 2 guards in black uniforms, their faces professionally blank. Chase's beautiful mask finally cracked. I saw him mouth the words, "This is a mistake, and I can explain." But explanations were currency he could no longer afford. They didn't handcuff him. Crescent Logic preferred to handle scandals quietly, but the walk of shame was just as effective. Chase emerged from the boardroom flanked by security, his Rolex catching the light as he gestured desperately. The entire floor had gone silent. 100 pairs of eyes tracking his progress toward the elevator. He looked around wildly, searching for allies, for sympathy, for someone to believe his version of events. His gaze swept past me without stopping. Even now, at his lowest moment, I remained invisible to him. 10:07 a.m. The elevator doors closed on Chase Doran's career at Crescent Logic. I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold, but I didn't mind. Around me, the office exploded with whispers, speculation, shock. How had Golden Boy Chase fallen so far so fast? What had compliance found? Who had reported him? Can you believe it? Sandra from marketing appeared at my desk, eyes wide with the thrill of fresh gossip. Chase, of all people. Shocking, I agreed, my voice perfectly calibrated for surprise. I heard he was falsifying client data. Can you imagine? All those bonuses, that promotion track? She shook her head. Makes you wonder who else is cooking the books. I suppose we never really know people, I offered. She nodded sagely and hurried off to spread the news. Within an hour, Chase's desk had been cleared, his nameplate removed, his computer confiscated by IT. It was like he'd never existed, except for the ghost of his cologne and the cautionary tale he'd become. Kumar sent a department-wide email at 2 p.m. Team. As you may have heard, Chase Doran is no longer with the company. Crescent Logic takes data integrity seriously and will not tolerate any breach of our ethical standards. Let this serve as a reminder that our values are not negotiable. On a related note, the Hartman account requires immediate attention. Mara, please see me about taking the lead. I read the email twice, then deleted it. No need to save trophies. At 5 p.m., I shut down my computer, gathered my things, and headed for the elevator. In my bag, wrapped in tissue paper, was a 7-year USB drive. Tomorrow, I'd drop it in the electronics recycling bin at Tech World. Evidence had a way of becoming liability if you held on to it too long. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. Same face as this morning. Same neutral expression. Same invisible woman who'd been underestimated one time too many. The only difference was the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. The aftermath was quieter than I'd expected. No dramatic investigation, no police tape, no federal agents in sunglasses. Crescent Logic handled the Chase situation like they handled everything. Swiftly, silently, and with an eye toward protecting the stock price. By Monday, it was as if he'd been erased from the company's collective memory. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. His email bounced back with a generic user not found message. Even the CrossFit photos he'd plastered on the break room bulletin board had vanished. I sat at my desk that Monday morning, staring at the space where Chase used to hold court. They'd already installed a new hire, a nervous kid fresh from Ohio State who jumped every time someone spoke to him. He'd learn, eventually. Whether he'd learn to survive or learn to become another Chase remained to be seen. Mara, Kumar's voice pulled me from my observations. He stood beside my desk, looking uncomfortable. Dennis Kumar had many skills, but humility wasn't among them. Could we talk? Conference room C. I followed him to the small meeting room, the one without glass walls. Private. Serious. I owe you an apology, he began, which might have been the most surprising thing to happen that week. The Hartman analysis, I should have recognized your work. The optimistic projections Chase presented nearly cost us the account. I nodded but said nothing. Let him fill the silence. Your original analysis, he continued, fidgeting with his pen, it saved us. When we presented the real numbers, the realistic timeline, Hartman appreciated our honesty. They've extended the contract for 2 more years. That's good news, I said neutrally. Kumar studied me, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt like he was actually seeing me. Not just a data analyst, not just a quiet woman in the corner, but a person with depths he'd never bothered to explore. You knew, he said finally, about Chase. You knew what he was doing. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I know data, patterns, anomalies. It's what you pay me for. But you didn't report it. I met his gaze steadily. Would you have believed me? The quiet analyst versus the golden boy. He had the grace to look away. We both knew the answer. Well, he cleared his throat, returning to safer ground. I want you leading the Hartman account going forward. There's a senior analyst position opening up. The pay increase is substantial. A promotion, more money, recognition. Everything I'd thought I wanted when I first walked through Crescent Logic's doors 7 years ago. But sitting there, watching Kumar try to retrofit his guilt into a reward, I felt nothing. I'll think about it, I said. His eyebrows shot up. People didn't typically think about promotions at Crescent Logic. They grabbed them like life preservers in a sea of ambition. Of course, he recovered. Take your time. But Mara, we value you here. I want you to know that. Valued. Like I was a piece of equipment that had unexpectedly proven its worth. I returned to my desk to find an email waiting. The sender's name made me pause. Olivia Hartman, CEO of Hartman Industries. Ms. Ellison, I wanted to personally thank you for your exceptional analysis. Your insights into our user engagement patterns were eye-opening. While I understand you work for Crescent Logic, I'd be interested in discussing opportunities within Hartman Industries. We value integrity and precision, qualities that seem to be in short supply. If you're interested, I'd love to buy you coffee. Best, Olivia. I read it twice, then leaned back in my chair. Outside the windows, Brooklyn Heights stretched gray and endless under overcast skies. 7 years I'd spent in this chair, in this corner, being invisible. 7 years of keeping my head down, doing excellent work that others claimed, building kingdoms for people who saw me as furniture. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey, this is Chase. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You were right. We weren't on the same team. I get that now. I deleted it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, weren't worth rebuilding. The office hummed around me with its usual Monday morning energy. Meetings being scheduled, deals being discussed, careers being built and destroyed. The great machine of corporate America grinding forward, indifferent to the individuals it consumed. I opened a new browser tab and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at my own LinkedIn profile. Senior Data Analyst at Crescent Logic. 7 years of experience. One profile photo that was 3 years out of date. A handful of skills endorsements from colleagues who'd probably forgotten I existed. Time for an update, perhaps. Time to stop being invisible. But first, I had a recycling run to make. The USB drive sat in my bag. Its purpose served. $7.05 had bought me something more valuable than Chase's career or Kumar's promotion or even Olivia Hartman's interest. It had bought me the knowledge that I didn't have to be loud to be heard. I didn't have to play their games to win. I just had to be patient, precise, and willing to act when the moment came. The meek might inherit the earth, but the quiet ones, we take it when nobody's looking. That evening, I sat in my apartment, a glass of wine untouched on the coffee table. The USB drive was gone, dropped in the recycling bin at Tech World as planned. No evidence, no trail, just a memory of how $7 had toppled a king. My laptop was open to Olivia Hartman's email. A door to a different future. Maybe. Or maybe just another glass building filled with predators in different costumes. Trust came hard after 7 years in the corporate wilderness. I thought about Chase, probably sitting in his overpriced apartment, wondering how his carefully constructed world had collapsed so quickly. Did he replay that Friday morning in his mind? Did he wonder who had exposed him? Part of me hoped he did. Part of me hoped he lay awake at night, parsing through every interaction, every colleague he'd wronged, trying to identify his executioner. But the larger part of me didn't care about Chase anymore. He was yesterday's problem, yesterday's lesson. My phone rang. Mom. Mara, honey, how was your day? The same question she'd asked every Sunday for 7 years. Usually, I gave the same answer. Fine, Mom, just work stuff. Tonight felt different. Actually, I said, surprising myself. It was interesting. I got promoted. Oh, sweetie, that's wonderful. You've worked so hard. I knew they'd recognize your worth eventually. Worth? Recognition. Such simple words that had taken so long to mean something. We talked for an hour about the promotion I hadn't accepted yet, about possibilities I hadn't considered, about a future that suddenly seemed less fixed than it had that morning. When we hung up, the wine was still untouched. But something inside me had shifted. I pulled up the Hartman Industries website, studied their mission statement, their values, their leadership team. Olivia Hartman's face stared back at me from the About page. Sharp eyes, knowing smile. The look of someone who'd fought her own battles in conference rooms and won. Maybe it was time to stop hiding in corners. Maybe it was time to stop being the quiet one who watched while others claimed victories built on my work. Or maybe not. Maybe power wasn't about being visible. Maybe it was about knowing that you could change everything with $7 and the right moment. I closed the laptop and finally took a sip of wine. Tomorrow, I'd make decisions. Tomorrow, I'd choose between Kumar's guilt promotion and Olivia's intriguing offer. Tomorrow, I'd update that LinkedIn profile and maybe even add a new photo. But tonight, I sat in my small apartment in Brooklyn Heights, Ohio, and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in 7 years of corporate survival, satisfied. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they're wrong. Revenge is best served precisely, quietly, and with such elegant simplicity that your target never sees it coming. It's not about the spectacle or the confrontation, it's about the result. Chase Doran thought he was a wolf among sheep. He never realized that some sheep are just wolves who've learned patience, who've learned that the best hunters don't announce themselves with howls. They wait, they watch, they strike once, decisively, and then fade back into the flock. $7, 5 minutes. One career destroyed, another potentially beginning. I raised my glass to the empty room, toasting silently. To the quiet ones, to the overlooked. To everyone who'd ever been told they were just anything, just an analyst, just support staff, just another invisible cog in the corporate machine. We're not just anything. We're the ones who keep the lights on, who know where the bodies are buried, who understand how the machine really works. And sometimes, when pushed too far, we're the ones who pull exactly the right lever to make it all come crashing down. Chase was gone, but there would be others. There always were. Predators who mistook silence for weakness, who built their success on the backs of those they deemed beneath notice. Let them come. I'd be ready. Not with $7 and a USB drive, that trick only works once. But with something far more dangerous. The knowledge that I didn't have to play by their rules to win their games. The wine was good. The silence was better. And somewhere in Brooklyn Heights, Chase Doran was learning what I'd always known. The most dangerous person in any office isn't the loudest voice or the biggest ego. It's the quiet one in the corner who sees everything, forgets nothing, and knows exactly when to act. 6 months later, I ran into Chase at a Starbucks downtown. He was wearing a cheap suit, the kind you buy off the rack at discount stores. No Rolex, no Harvard tie clip, just another face in the morning coffee line, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear into himself. He saw me before I could decide whether to leave. His face went through a series of expressions: recognition, fear, anger, and finally, something like resignation. "Mara," he said quietly when I reached the counter. "Chase." The barista called out orders between us, the normal soundtrack of corporate mornings. We stood there. Two people who'd shared an office, a conflict, and a conclusion neither of us had fully anticipated. "I work at Sterling Financial now," he offered, naming a third-tier firm known for taking corporate refugees. "Junior analyst position, starting over." Junior analyst, the same role I'd held for 7 years while people like him climbed past me. "That's good," I said, meaning it. Fresh starts can be valuable. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what the funny thing is? I still don't know how it happened. One minute I was presenting, the next..." He shrugged. "It said it came from my own login, like I reported myself. How is that even possible?" I could have told him, could have explained about USB drives and logging scripts and the poetic justice of making a liar tell the truth. But what would be the point? The lesson had been taught. The price had been paid. "Technology can be unpredictable," I said instead. He studied me then, really looked at me for perhaps the first time, not through me or past me, but at me. And I saw the moment understanding dawned, not the how, but the who. "It was you," he whispered. I picked up my latte from the counter. "Take care, Chase." I left him standing there, the truth settling over him like morning fog. By the time he processed it fully, I'd be gone. Just another commuter in the Brooklyn Heights morning rush, 2 blocks away. I smiled, not from satisfaction or vindication, but from freedom. Chase knowing changed nothing. He couldn't prove it, couldn't undo it, couldn't even warn others without sounding paranoid. The perfect crime isn't the one that goes unsolved, it's the one that can't be prosecuted even when solved. My phone buzzed. An email from Olivia Hartman, whose coffee meetings had turned into a job offer I'd accepted 3 months ago. Better pay, better environment, and most importantly, a culture that valued substance over style. "Mara, excellent work on the Patterson analysis. The board is impressed. Looking forward to discussing your director promotion next week." Oh, director. At 35, I was finally getting the recognition that people like Chase had assumed was their birthright. I still worked quietly, still preferred data to drama, analysis to ambition. But I no longer sat in corners or made myself invisible. At Hartman Industries, competence was its own currency, and I was wealthy beyond measure. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about that morning at Crescent Logic. $7 that changed 2 careers, one destroyed, one liberated. I thought about all the quiet ones still sitting in their corners, doing excellent work while others took credit, keeping their heads down, staying professional, waiting. To them, I wanted to say, your time will come. Maybe not with a USB drive or a logging script. Maybe not with anything as dramatic as watching security escort your tormentor from the building. But there will be a moment when the scales tip. When patience becomes power. When being underestimated becomes your greatest weapon. When that moment comes, don't hesitate. Don't feel guilty. Don't second-guess yourself. Act. Because here's the truth they don't teach in business school. The corporate world isn't divided between predators and prey. It's divided between those who adapt and those who assume. Chase assumed he was untouchable. He assumed I was harmless. He assumed silence meant submission. He assumed wrong. $7, 5 minutes. One career that deserved to end, another that deserved to begin. Sometimes justice comes from HR, Sometimes it comes from legal departments or regulatory bodies or karmic intervention. And sometimes it comes from a quiet data analyst with a $7 USB drive and the patience to wait for exactly the right moment. The meek might inherit the earth. But the quiet ones? We take it back, $7 at a time. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with those of you who've ever felt overlooked or underestimated in your workplace. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Are you Team Mara, or do you think revenge went too far? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share your own experiences with workplace justice in the comments. Sometimes the best revenge stories are the ones we live ourselves.